when all sides are killing in the Patriot game. And that's how it's done.
This is Heroes and Patriots. Heroes and Patriots is a program about national security, intelligence, and foreign policy. Today is Thursday, August 1st, 2024. We are coming to you live from the studios of KMUD Community Radio. Good morning, I'm Mary Massey, and with me is co-host John SAKOWICZ. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Mary, and good morning to our audience listening to the broadcast live throughout Northern California, and to our national and international audience listening to the web stream. I'm very excited about today's show. We have a new guest, Keith McHENRY, who will be talking about how high tech is and the surveillance state is breaking up homeless camps and just surveilling homeless people. And believe me, what can happen to them can happen to you. Right. Our second guest is an old friend of our show, and we are just so honored to have her, COLEEN ROWLEY, 2002 Time Magazine Person of the Year, the FBI whistleblower who lost her job for telling her boss, FBI Director Mueller, that 9/11 could have been prevented except for his incompetence. Lost her job, sued to get her job back, and prevailed. And now she teaches ethics at the FBI Training Academy. Great show today. Let's kick it off, Mary.
Heroes and Patriots is archived right here at KMUD, our program Facebook and YouTube pages, and our website, heroespatriots.org. And for those listeners who would like to call in with questions on topic for our guests this morning, that number, 707-923-3911. So as John mentioned, in this first half hour, we will be speaking with Keith McHENRY. Mr. McHENRY is co-founder of the Global Food Not Bombs movement. It provides free meals to anyone who needs them. He is also a regular contributor to the ongoing series Food Fight on Flashpoint. And with that, we'd like to bring Mr. McHENRY into the program. Welcome to the program, Keith.
Thanks for having me. Well, I haven't been on KMUD, I think, since Judy Berry's days.
Wow,
she
you've got
used
a great
to interview
memory.
me quite frequently. Yeah.
What did you speak about at that time?
It's kind of the same stuff. You know, she was being framed by the FBI for her work, trying to stop the clear cutting of the redwoods. And as we know, she ended up being targeted. And her case is real, and particularly Daryl Cherney's documentary, Who Bombed Judy Berry, is one of the best on FBI infiltration, surveillance, and manipulation of social movements in the United States. It's like he did a great job of that. And interestingly,
FBI has lost a lot of the important physical evidence in that case, so it really can't ever be reopened.
Correct. Yeah, my felony attorney for when I faced 3 strikes was Dennis Cunningham, and who was also the her attorney, or in the or really Daryl's ultimately in the civil case against Oakland and the FBI for bombing her. So
yeah. Well, Keith, we're really honored to have you. I didn't know this background about you. You're really like you're like Keith OG McHENRY.
I am very OG, man. I lost my virginity to the FBI surveillance operations in the late 70s.
Wow.
And once I blew my mind the first time, I realized all my co-activists in my group were FBI, except for one friend. After that, I'm never fazed by surveillance, and in fact, it's just a part of life.
Well, welcome home to KMUD.
Thank you.
Hey, Keith, before we get started, if you could just bring us fast forward to what Food Not Bombs is, what your involvement is, when you found it, and how it works.
Yeah, so Food Not Bombs started. There's like 8 of us in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and we essentially we were protesting Seabrook Nuclear Power Station up in New Hampshire, and one of our friends got arrested at the May 24th occupation attempt, and we found a wealthy person to bail him out. So on the way home, we decided we would do bake sales to raise money to pay back the person that bailed Brian out. And they were unsuccessful, but we did have we found a poster in a moving company. We had Smooth Move. It said, "Wouldn't it be a beautiful day if the schools had all the money they needed,
Yeah.
and the Air Force had to hold a bake sale to buy a bomber?" And that started really our street performances, warning that the Reagan administration and the policies of the Bank of Boston, the Federal Reserve, and so on would ultimately lead to a future where there'd be homeless people living on the streets and having to eat at soup kitchens. And when Reagan was elected, no one, was not. There were not homeless people everywhere like we have
Right.
today. And so then in 1988, because of a lot of FBI and mafia situation, I had to go underground, and then I moved to San Francisco. When Brian Wilson got hit by the train at Nuremberg Actions and Concord Naval Weapons Station, I went to the weekend protest. That made me end up on TV, so I was no longer underground. So then I restarted Food Not Bombs, a second group in San Francisco. On August 15th of 88, we had applied for permits to serve food at the entrance to Golden Gate Park, but we were arrested. I was arrested and 8 others on August 15th, 88. And then people came back the next week. The police arrested 24 people on August 22nd. Oddly enough, the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force was at that arrest, and they filed a memo to the San Francisco field office on the 29th of August claiming we were a national security threat. At that point, there was 10 volunteers in Boston, 10 in San Diego, and 10 in San Francisco, and yet we were already labeled a national security threat. And then that Thanksgiving, we were the subject of the National Guard's domestic terrorism workshops across America, where we were declared America's most hardcore terrorist group.
Wow.
It was because of this, though, however, that it launched a worldwide movement. So today, we are in probably 1,500 cities of the world. We're in at least 70 countries. Right now, we have a Beirut chapter that is bracing for that war. We have a Tel Aviv and Jerusalem chapter, which has been out in front of in fact, where the Houthis hit. The U.S. consulate in Tel Aviv, Food Not Bombs, have been protesting in front of that building. We also have been, sharing food through. Right now, we're feeding survivors of a cyclone in the Philippines. We've been doing food through the entire military dictatorship, current wave of dictatorship in Myanmar, so we are like on the front lines. We're like the refugees from Ukraine. Unbelievable amounts of people eating with us in Poland, and we have 4 prisoners in Belarus right now that have been sentenced to 5 years in prison. So we're working to try to free them. And then we've been had volunteers killed in Russia serving food in St. Petersburg and stuff over the years. Although we've kind of lost contact with a lot of our Russian chapters and Ukrainian chapters since the special military operation.
And how does this unfold? How are you funded? How do people get involved and so forth before we go on to today's topic?
So, it's funded by, actually, oddly enough, and very frightening, because this will be connected to part of today's topic, largely through PayPal.
Through PayPal?
You mean Peter Thiel?
Mr. Peter Thiel, the person that's involved in the whole attack against the homeless, or his coworker Joe Lansdale.
Right.
But anyway, so it's like I panhandle. Food Not Bombs basically panhandles online. That's one of the things. So we have a dollar for peace, and it's largely $5 and $10 donations. There's also, we do benefit concerts, and then people, just pay, the volunteers pay for a lot of their own stuff, basically.
Right.
So we don't get any federal funding, state funding. In fact, governments virtually everywhere, with the exception, oddly enough, of Nigeria, very much dislike us. But we are actually kind of frighteningly very tight to the government of Nigeria, which is really weird. But anyway, So there's, and they're very wonderful people, the people I know in Nigeria doing Food Not Bombs. But that's pretty much the only cooperation between a government and Food Not Bombs that there is. And so
Right.
and it's all volunteers. So go to foodnotbombs.net, and then you could you could go to the map. There's a Google map. Here's another CIA front for you. Then you could find where your local chapter is, and or you could just email me, and I'll try to find where your local chapter is. Or you can start a chapter, and on foodnotbombs.net under volunteer, you can also see the how to start a chapter, 7 steps to starting a Food Not Bombs group.
Well, Keith, we're going to have you back, I think, for a full hour in the future. You have so much to say about topics that are so important. The food crisis, not just in this country, but throughout the world. We'd like to hear more about it. But for today's show, let's kind of bore down on this whole issue of the campaign to make it a crime to be homeless, which has been pushed by CIA-linked Joe Lonsdale Cicero Institute, who is also a co-founder of this surveillance company called Palantir, and how that effort just received a boost from an executive order from our Governor Gavin Newsom, directing state and local officials to start removing homeless encampments, if not to arrest the homeless outright for the crime of being homeless. Take it away.
Yeah. So anyway, Joe Lansdale he filed a amicus brief for the Supreme Court ruling to overturn. And I think he had more energy behind that than what he publicly admits. But the Cicero Institute, which was started by Joe Lansdale, who was also one of the founders of Palantir, which is a CIA. So essentially, when Total Information Awareness, which was a government program against after the war on terrorism started, was objected to, and the TIPS program, which were all started by Iran Contra, features like anyway, the government removed it from it being the government because they were get a lot of pushback, and so they decided to subcontract the CIA program to Palantir. So the CIA provided the funding to start Palantir. Joe Lansdale, Peter Thiel in the PayPal mafia basically were the founders of Palantir, which has been super involved. They just were bragging about targeting in Gaza and targeting in Ukraine. And they also, though, are participating in predictive policing and an AI to track homeless people. And homeless camps in San Jose, California, actually has a program that they were all excited about where they could find all the homeless camps. And it turns out it's like all over America that AI programs, either by Palantir or by there's another company specializing in anti-homeless AI surveillance out of Austin, Texas, which is the same city that Palantir is headquartered in now. And there's likely that there's some connection to both of those, but I haven't found that out. I just learned that recently. So anyway, Joe Lansdale's Cicero Institute started in 2016, and his idea was on the homeless issue, was to make it illegal to be homeless. So he started providing a template for anti-homeless laws, criminalization laws, particularly trying to get it to be at least a misdemeanor, in some cases a felony, as is the case in Tennessee, to be homeless. And so he's had, I would say probably about 10 or 11 states have adopted it. North Carolina is about to enter into effort to create one of his laws. This year alone, Florida, Kentucky, and Oklahoma have just adopted his anti-homeless template. And so when you have the Grants Pass versus Johnson, which was a law that meant that you couldn't criminalize that was a Ninth Circuit Court of Appeal ruling that we've been using, and we use it here in Santa Cruz to block the eviction of homeless camps, because there would be, under that restriction, you had to have enough shelter space for everybody in that camp if you evicted the camp. But in Grants Pass, they used that and won, and then it got overturned with the help of Gavin Newsom, the mayors across the state of California, and particularly Democratic Party affiliated mayors, and other municipal and state leaders throughout the West, and actually ultimately around the United States, to have that overturned. So it was overturned in late April by the U.S. Supreme Court, and it was hailed by Joe Lansdale and the Cicero Institute as being this wonderful thing. And it started opening the door for criminalization of the homeless. And we already have been seeing police officers using that ruling and they're taking away people's camps, saying, look at, we're out, there's a very, on social media, there's been a video of campers losing all their stuff in San Francisco last week, where the cops are saying, well, now, between the Supreme Court ruling and Gavin Newsom's executive order, which was issued on July 25th, which was to order all state agencies to remove camps and to encourage all city governments and county governments to start removing homeless people and their camps, and that he threatened to cut off funding from municipalities and counties that refused to try to get rid of their homeless camps. And then to just think that Newsom has spent $24 billion since 2019 on homelessness, but you don't see any evidence of that housing people or ending homelessness or providing addiction treatments or anything. You just see a militarization of the homeless. And I'm very concerned because we're just about to start World War III. Maybe it's starting during the interview. I don't know. That just like in World War II, where Japanese internment camps were set up, or in Germany, where they actually started moving the homeless into places like Dachau to work on the war effort, we could see an extreme situation where homeless people will be moved into camps. So if you have the CIA who's pushing this agenda, a CIA affiliate, pushing this agenda like the Cicero Institute is, and they're using Palantir's AI and surveillance data to track homeless people. If you're a homeless person and you're trying to get housing, they have this thing called the vulnerability form. That's a 52-page form, and it even asks you such things like, do you get a prescription medication that you then sell? It asks you for all your how you make money through either sex or whatever, things like this. 52 pages that are put into a computer that people, case managers, walk around in camps asking you these questions and putting this in, and companies like Palantir then put that together as a profile of how to determine which homeless people are where and what their trips are and how many people are on psychiatric drugs and so on. So they're putting all that together with AI for finding where camps are.
Right.
And then it should also be pointed out that Palantir's, the Joe Lansdale and Peter Thiel, who's the person behind J.D. Vance,
right,
who became vice president, also are profiting off the prisons that they're building. And currently there are bids out for prison camps, soft tents and so on, in all 50 states in the United States that could hold into the millions of Americans if these contracts are actually implemented.
Yeah, let's, whatever happens to the homeless could happen to all of us. This whole thing with Palantir ain't no joke. And we're going to talk about total information awareness and the surveillance state in a second. But I also want to point out that Palantir has not just been tracking homeless and building, mega data about the homeless through closed circuit TV feeds and many other data streams through facial recognition software, etc. But they're also doing this for illegal migrants. They're tracking their children and their children's caretakers, and then directing ICE to make arrests. this is very insidious. And the background to that, to Palantir, is a very secret organization called InQtel. It is the venture capital arm of the CIA. If you could just Google up InQtel and see some of the companies in their portfolio, and some of those companies will just blow your mind, the degree to which we are currently being surveilled. Again, this is all being funded by the CIA. This seed capital, this Kickstarter capital, and the incubator management talent is all coming from the national security agencies, the alphabet agencies. It's got started through something post 9/11 and total information awareness, and now we're starting to reap that whirlwind. Keith, tell us, our audience, a little bit about the surveillance state and how insidious and dangerous it is.
And then we're going to take a call.
Okay, great. Well, I mean, I've been under surveillance since I was about 18 because of my anti-war activism. And eventually I got personally blacklisted after 9/11 from employment in the United States. I've been honey trapped. In fact, I lost a house and everything I owned behind a honey trap, which is, people in the security state hustling you as a girlfriend and ultimately a wife. And and it's like it's ever present, and it's very disruptive to the ability to organize for social change in the United States. So, like, a lot of people wonder why a lot of things don't happen. It's because virtually any organization that starts gets infiltrated immediately by actual human infiltration, as well as the fact that everything on your phone, everything on your computer, and everything that you do, there's even software that hooks you up so that they know all the people you interact with, and Facebook was great for helping with this. Then they know, well, that person is kind of, has a hot button issue. You can harass, if you do this to that person, it'll have this effect to the organization that you're in, and manipulate it down to that level. And now with AI, a lot of it just can happen through algorithms without even human direct intervention in disrupting social movements. So we're in a very dangerous place. So maybe we should take the call.
Yeah, let's see what's on the mind of the caller. Caller, if you're listening, go ahead with your question.
Yes, thank you. So this terribly dystopian and seemingly hopeless situation, really, thank you for explaining it. But I'm just wondering, is there any sign of hope anywhere? I know there are positive coalitions in favor of the homeless. If we take just maybe the small part of what you're talking about. What possibility is there of building coalitions that can confront this, or the range of destructive things that you're talking about, starting with the homeless, but also going up through surveillance?
Well, the thing that we've kind of there are like we're trying to hook together like all the legal organizations that are supporting the homeless, and so there is actually some suggestions of now challenging these anti-camping laws, not using what was based on Martin versus Boise or Grants Pass versus Johnson, but other aspects of the U.S. Constitution. Although that's going to be a long process. The other thing is, and then with street activists like myself. So we're trying to build this unity of these two communities. But the other thing is that the homeless people themselves, one of the things about them is that they're generally speaking very independent. So they're not going to put up with this kind of stuff. And so I think that there is actually just on the street resistance. And the other thing is that we're building our own, like Food Not Bombs has its own little, we have our infrastructure. We're outside the government. We do what we want. And I think there is that human spirit that is the hope that we have.
Pete, we have another caller for you. Caller, if you're listening, go ahead with your question.
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, perfect. I just wanted to reiterate how insidious this is, and the fact that basically any of us could end up being homeless. Essentially, with automation, there's going to be mass displacement of workers, and with capital, basically buying up homes and stuff like that. There's going to be a large number of us that are going to be joining the ranks of homeless or those that are opposed to what's going on with the government. And so it's something for all of us to really pay attention to. And thank you for your work. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
You make a good point because Forbes just reported, or a few months ago, that 81% of us are living paycheck to paycheck here in the U.S. Do we have another call?
No?
No.
Okay.
Mary was just giving us the
Time cue.
the time cue.
Beautiful.
Why don't we wrap it up with you, Keith? We're going to have you back for a full hour. Again, just to tell us a little bit more about your organization and about how this recent Supreme Court ruling, Grants Pass versus Johnson, really has given a lot of authority to law enforcement to arrest the homeless, to arrest illegal immigrants, to arrest the caretakers of the children of illegal immigrants. How we're really transitioning into a very scary era.
Yeah, we definitely are. We do these anti-sweep protests outside the mayor's house here in Santa Cruz, and the honking is unbelievable. So the reality is there's a lot of us that see the horror that's happening, but we're not united, and we really need to get united as a force against what's happening. But you can find out more about Food Not Bombs at foodnotbombs.net. You could call me directly at the toll-free number there.
What is the number?
And that's 1-800-884-1136. And you can we have a book, Hungry for Peace, on how to start a local Food Not Bombs chapter. And there are chapters in the listening area that you can get involved with. So we do have groups in Arcata and East Bay, Eureka, and so on. So there is a possibility for joining a local Food Not Bombs group, and just go to the foodnotbombs.net. And we are finding that there's a lot more people coming to eat with us, so we need a lot more volunteers. And as the last caller pointed out, there's a lot more people becoming homeless. We even have people living in Teslas eating at Food Not Bombs in Santa Cruz. Who would have thought that?
Right.
And that's where we're at now.
Mary and I try to do our parts here in Ukiah. We often leave food down at Riverside Park at the end of Gobi Street in Ukiah near the Russian River. We leave the food and drinks. We left a whole bunch of drinks the other day on the picnic tables. And lo and behold, it's not just the homeless people who live at the park who take some of the food and drinks, but it's actually some of the kids playing, little league ball who are hungry. And it just breaks my heart just to see the magnitude of the need out there. And, I just see that in my own little microcosm.
Great. Keith McHENRY, we want to thank you for opening our eyes and ears and hearts for this first 30 minutes. You are the co-founder of the global Food Not Bombs movement, and it provides free meals to anyone who needs them. Again, give us your website so people can become involved, and then goodbye.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for having me. And it's foodnotbombs.net. You can also email me, keith@foodnotbombs.net, or call me toll free at 1-800-884-1136. Thank you so much.
God bless you, Keith.
Bye-bye. We're going to have a little musical interlude, and we'll be back with Coleen Rowley.
Oh, she's one of my favorites, too. I've known her for years. Beautiful.
It's a good vibe this morning.
Yep. I better go. Bye-bye.
Bye.
the second half of Heroes and Patriots. We had a little technical glitch there. Thank you for hanging in. We're going to be speaking to returning guest Colleen Rowley, and I feel very strongly that there will be listeners, John, who want to speak with her and have questions for her. That number to call, 707-923-3911. So we are joined by Colleen Rowley. She's a resident of Minnesota, and Ms. Rowley was just with a group of peace activists, John, at the Republican National Convention, which I'm sure was interesting. They had a big red Stop the Genocide banner, and she has been connected with an increase, long been connected with an increase in domestic U.S. violence with wars. You can see that in 2018 interview, FBI whistleblower, this culture of violence starts with perpetual wars, which is another topic we have been discussing over the years. Ms. Rowley is a retired FBI agent who was named one of Time Magazine's Persons of the Year in 2002. And since 2004, she has been speaking at academic and other professional venues with an emphasis on ethical decision making. She's a longtime member of Women Against Military Madness and Veterans for Peace. Colleen, it's so great to see you again and welcome you back.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Yeah, and I want to add that Colleen Rowley is really like one of the pillars of our show. That's what I like to think of her over the years. We've been doing radio since 2007, 2008, since the global financial crisis. And Colleen Rowley, along with Ray McGovern and so many, Matthew Ho, Bill Binney, Kirk Wiebe, Peter Van Buren, Tom Drake, Snowden, have just really been the pillars of the show throughout the years. So we really, we're so happy to have you back, Colleen. It's been a while. Why don't you bring us up to date as to what you were doing at the Republican convention and just how this all fits in with our culture of war and genocide? How it really this madness really seems to be picking up steam as we move into another presidential cycle.
Yeah, I wish I wasn't a pillar of your show in a way, because, when 9/11 happened, it was the so-called new Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, we had a little glitch there. I said I wish I wasn't a pillar of your show, but since 9/11 in 2001, when the neocon war hawks began to fully militarize the United States, and with all the inherent blowback that Keith just mentioned on how people now are homeless and starving in the United States, people can look out there, the suicide rates, the drug addiction, all of these problems, domestic problems that are now a function of the blowback of this fool's errand of the United States trying to seek unipolar dominance, full spectrum dominance. And this all really got supercharged on 9/11. So once I became a whistleblower afterwards about how the FBI, and of course I didn't even know about the CIA, but we could have prevented 9/11 actually quite easily simply by sharing information, and not only between agencies, but with the public. It's a very, very easy answer, but instead of the easy solution to preventing more acts of terrorism, which is just essentially greater information sharing, especially with the public, instead of that, they went to secrecy in order to launch that project for the New American Century agenda, which involves a perpetual war on a number of countries, first in the Mideast, but now actually including the other superpowers of Russia and China. And as Keith just mentioned, it's now put us on the trajectory of World War III, which will go nuclear quite quickly. So it's a sad thing, but once you end up in this mode, and especially as a whistleblower, I think you have to continue doing everything you can to try to prevent the worst outcome. So most recently, one of the latest things that I and my husband did is we traveled to the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee in order to display the Stop the Genocide big message, which actually, frankly, due to media suppression, took a back seat.
You know, we've had in the past, we had Bob Gates on the show, a former Secretary of Defense and CIA director, when he was launching his book, his last book, and he exclaimed, to my astonishment, and I quote, "War is a business, and business is good." And I've come to think that that the engine of the American economy is war. That so much of our budget goes to the military, so much of our budget goes to war. And America always has to be at war for our economy to keep chugging along. Is that a mistaken notion? Am I just nuts? Or am I exaggerating? Or is this really the case that we've been at war since World War II? Our country has always been at war since World War II. There's been a war somewhere. And that if not for war, America's number one export, our economy would start to sputter.
No, I think that you are exactly right. This all did begin after World War II, when the geostrategic thinkers of the day decided that the United States now has emerged from World War II as relatively unscathed. Our manufacturing put us as the top power of the world. And now as Kennan said, how do we maintain that position of power? Because, we only have 4% of the population, but at the time we controlled 50% of the world's GNP. And the big issue was, how do we maintain it? Well, Kennan's answer was containment of the other World War II victors. That was his answer. And even Kennan came to understand that this just kept going. So you get Eisenhower midway now basically saying, hey, this has gone too far. Our military-industrial complex is actually the tail wagging the dog. So the manufacturing, we gave up manufacturing of normal consumer goods and things that might be helpful to humanity, and we're only manufacturing weapons of war. Here in Minnesota, just a few miles from my house, was a large Lockheed facility. Lockheed's the number one military-industrial contractor in the world. Right. And it was only a few miles from our house. We used to have whole anti-war signs across the street from it. Finally, it was the only property in the United States that was the actual land was relatively uncontaminated, so it could be sold off. So finally, Lockheed sold this big acreage because it was the least contaminated land that it owned. And when that happened, a lot of the Democrat partisan people that would often join our peace vigil, because they were against Bush's wars and they would actually join in, they turned against us. We're losing jobs. And so this military industrial complex works in a lot of ways, but one of the ways it works is they get facilities and jobs all over the country. That's why our congressmen are completely corrupted and sold out by it. And no one really understands how this could be converted to a more humanitarian. I mean, essentially, humans need a lot of things, but we don't need bombs. We need a lot of things that could be produced and made. And those would all, if you're into profit making, those could all be a wonderful ideas. But instead of doing this, we remain essentially stuck. And now it's not only the military-industrial complex, but it's what Ray McGovern has coined the term, because it's much expanded beyond what Eisenhower even could have imagined. Right. It's now in the United States, the military-industrial, congressional, intelligence, media, academia, think tank complex. Mickey
Right.
Madness, I think.
Absolutely.
And so that's excellent, because it now actually controls everything. It controls our government. it is again really the tail wagging the dog. So you're absolutely right. It's our business right now in the United States. I'll just explain something else here that was the transformation from World War II. Again, I say 9/11 supercharged this, which is, I think, correct, because it was ongoing from World War II. But the one thing that's happened over this time period, and you go back to Kennan, is that the actual power is a spectrum of soft power, things on the very far, actually there's a legitimate aspect of soft power, which is moral authority, governing by leadership by example. So leadership by example and moral authority is actually legitimate. It's probably the only legitimate part of the power spectrum. And then you go from there, you go into what the CIA does, which is gaining intelligence, so-called intelligence. Actually, it's blackmail, dirt on foreign leaders and different powerful figures in order to coerce them into whatever. That's not really legitimate, but it's done. All the spying, by the way, all over the world that helps collect this stuff. Then you actually get into hard economic power, which is the use of our dollar as the reserve currency, and economic sanctions on countries that do not kowtow to U.S. Wishes, do not do what we want. We put on we're doing this now with Venezuela in spades. You see it all over the world, though. And it's not legitimate either. It's based on economic power. And then finally, when the soft power is either ebbed away or no longer works that well, you are forced into hard military force. And this is where we're at right now. I would say with 9/11, and by the way, that economic power of the United States did decline, precipitously decline. Because again, war might be our business, but it's not a real good business. The things that China is making are actually producing more gross national product and everything else. If we could just understand that war being our business is it's not really the best business that we should be using. Our economic power has declined. So our economic sanctions aren't even working now. They're not even working. So we're forced. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, because now we're forced into, and again, I'm talking like a Zbigniew Brzezinski or one of these geostrategic chess players, because they are into power. Machiavellian power. And if you understand how this actual power works, it's actually backfiring on the United States and NATO allies and Israel. It's actually backfiring on us. Our leaders are so engrossed in it and they're so corrupted by it that they haven't had, I guess, time to realize that they need to change direction at this point.
Colleen, going back to your time with at the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee, do you see any appreciable difference when it comes to the agenda for a perpetual war and the propaganda machine behind that for making the case for perpetual war? Do you see any difference between the Democratic and Republican parties?
In foreign policy and militarism and war, there is zero difference in substance. They have the exact same agendas. Now, they may differ slightly in how they sell it to the American public. That's what differs. We have the Democrats trying to use humanitarian love. I will say humanitarian love. I think it's actually, frankly, a more subtle and effective thing with some people to say that we love the world so much that we're willing to kill 4.5 million. Since 9/11, the Brown Institute says the United States has killed 4.5 million people around the world. I think it's up from that because that's dated, and I think it's probably closer to 5 million at this point. So if you can understand what a lie that could be, I mean, what a lie that Obama and Hillary Clinton. We love you so much. We love the Ukrainians. We love the people in the Mideast. We're going to free them from tyranny, and we're going to bring them the Pax Americana. We're going to police them, sell them our weapons, by the way, and it will be love and peace and harmony and human rights. We're killing people for human rights. Now, that's the propaganda, and I would say that probably does work on some people better, even though it's a huge lie. But then you get Trump's propaganda, which is more blunt, and it's just that the appeal to power. He'll often say, "I'm so powerful that no country would ever challenge me." Look at weak Biden. They only challenged him because he was weak, and I'm more powerful, and I would never have put up with this. I'll quote unquote finish the job, meaning that he's appealing to people's, I would say, the male, testosterone driven
Right.
power thing.
It's 46 minutes past the hour.
Yes, I can.
Okay, good. So it's 47 minutes past the hour. We are talking with COLEEN ROWLEY, and she is relaying some of the information from the Republican National Convention. I want to turn to Trump and Project 2025, which was the subject of our discussion today. Could you let our listeners know this is something that's been around for years and only recently seems to have been picked up in mainstream media? They're now starting to raise questions and affiliate Trump with it. Could you let our listeners know what is Project 2025 and what is its purpose?
I will confess I have not read the 900 pages of Project. I'm assuming now the one thing that is somewhat legitimate, and Trump would need a lot of help in this, is picking his new administration.
Right.
Now, if you see his first term, he did a terrible job. He actually even picked people like James Comey, then FBI director. He was rehired by Trump. Trump put his arms around James Comey. James Comey, you can't imagine anything stupider, again, from a strategic standpoint, than picking your worst enemy. He picked his worst enemy to be who leaked information about him, and Comey wasn't the only one. There were a number of people in the Trump administration, handpicked even by Trump, just because Trump is frankly, I will say he's an idiot. And he picked Eric Charmilla and the CIA, all these people that actually were the ones who fomented the Russiagate lies that fueled Rachel Maddow and Schiff and out there and led to 2 impeachments of Trump himself. So
right.
in all fairness, Trump needs help in picking his administration. At least he does, if he wants to have people not working actively against him. Now, on the other hand, the agenda would be something, certainly in the foreign policy, it's, again, the same thing, controlling the world. And again, it's a fool's errand because it's all blowing back on the United States. One of the things that I have always tried to, even since 2002, I've tried to argue to people and make them understand how this notion of using wars and whatever to control the world is going to hurt the United States, even the seeking of empire. If you read those Chalmers Johnson's books, the blowback and the Soros of empire, it's simple history. You can look at all of the empires throughout history, and as they get so full of hubris and so corrupted, they rot from the inside. And I think you can look out there and see that this blowback on the United States, including the homelessness, as you just discussed, but also including the suicide rate. There's a new piece by Nick Turse. The number one enemy of the military is suicide.
Right.
We have thousands of people committing now, and depression. Look at the young people. The hope of of the future lies in the young people learning to become scientists and engineers, etc., as frankly our competitors, China and whatever, are doing. Their young people are studying hard to become top scientists and come up with solutions to the problems. Whereas in the United States, a lot of our young people are simply committing suicide. You know, they are so hopeless and depressed. They're taking drugs. So, I mean, it's all around us, but to some extent, we're kind of like goldfish swimming in the fishbowl, and we don't realize we're swimming in water because it's so close. It's all around us.
So
But the blowback.
in addition to selecting his future administration, that's thus 2025, should he be elected, what policies are they hoping to institute? Why is everyone up in arms about this Project 2025? And should they be?
Well, I think one of the main challenges for the Trump administration, and this goes back to their first term, will be control. Okay, how do they control, for instance, the media, who already is very much against, the liberal media is very much against Trump.
Right.
So I think that this, and you look at like incarceration, concentration camp ideas. And how do you stop people from saying, and even people in some levels of power? Marjorie Taylor Greene, for instance, she's got a little bit of power, but she says, what are we doing in Ukraine? You know, we're funding a proxy war. So how do you control this from the top down? And the problem is, if they use the same methods of control on the American people as they are using in the world, which is, gaining regime change coups so that they have the leader. Now, that's really bad because that puts us right back into these, kind of the Civil War era. The Civil War era, you had no freedom of speech.
Right.
In all fairness, Abraham Lincoln, again, he was trying to get the population on his side. And so he had to imprison editors if they had any independent thoughts about this. So that's what we're looking at. And we already have seen, going back to the Espionage Act, all those whistleblowers that you cited that are the veteran intelligence professionals at the start, they're all in our little, I guess we would call it a movement or a club. We're all people who have gone against power. Actually, now there are, I think, 9 whistleblowers that have resigned from the State Department that did not want to go with Blinken's,
Right.
endless propaganda and support of genocide, killing children. I mean, how can you go along with this and still have any kind of sense of decency about yourself? And those whistleblowers, and to try to control that dissent, and as war gets older and older, it gets more hard. It gets harder. The lies about being humanitarian and all get harder to get through. And I think the crush of that is what we have to fear. And as things get worse, we're all going to be facing this and looking at it in, our friends, well, people were arrested. A lot of people are being arrested. Look at the campus arrests, just protesting genocide. And you have to be called anti-Semitic. The Jewish people, the Jewish voices for peace have to be labeled and called anti-Semitic. And laws now, bills have been suggested, bills in Congress, that they are traitors. And they have to be jailed, as Debs was during World War I, etc. I think this is what we're looking at.
Wow.
Colleen, I think probably the 2 most credible groups in the peace movement are probably women and combat vets. Women because they're mothers and they lose their sons and daughters in wars, and combat vets, of course, because they personally paid the price. You were a member of both Women Against Military Madness and Veterans for Peace. Why don't you wrap up our show today with you by just telling our audience a little bit about Women and Mothers Against Military Madness and Veterans for Peace?
Well, I just read a piece about training soldiers how to kill. And Pete Seeger has a famous line in there about, we were told to yell, kill, kill, kill with our bayonets, and most of the troops don't want to do that. And if you think about now, if they were to have a draft and a conscription and force the same war hawks, by the way, the same war hawks who have children, to put their children in this type of position of kill or be killed, and to turn them basically into mass killers. A lot of them cannot end it after war, and they come back and they turn into the mass shooters, etc. Now, this is where the mothers, nobody is trained as a baby and as a child to spear things with a bayonet and say, kill, kill, unless you're training Ted Bundy to be a killer. So I think the mothers are good that way. The bad thing about women, if you have to be very careful, because Condi Rice and Hillary Clinton and now Kamala Harris, a lot of women are more ambitious than caring about if they even have children, by the way, and let alone caring about their children. Their own ambition trumps them. And you see this over and over with this opportunism of these women who have risen into positions of power. The veterans, I'll just quickly touch on, the veterans actually know the reality. And so the Smedley Butlers and Larry Wilkersons of the world are the ones who know that, have been there and know that. And they're the best, absolute best. The ones, it's easy to talk war when you have no skin in the game. And by the way, this goes back to what I just said about the United States and the fact that we're sending our young people to war, partially because no one has a good appreciation of what is even happening here.
Yeah, I want to thank you very much for being on the show. I hope Matt Ho is listening to the show. He's another one of the pillars of our show.
Right.
And, he talks about, he's a 100% disabled vet. And he has spoken on our show about directly and about his personal experiences as a company commander of headquarters company of the Marine Expeditionary Force in Kabul, Afghanistan, and no one is more credible than Matt Ho as a combat vet. No one is more credible than you as a mother and as a whistleblower and as a former FBI agent. We pray for your continued efforts, Colleen. We'll have you back again, maybe for an update, maybe after the Democratic Party convention. Will you be going to their convention as well?
We're going to try. Logistically, it's going to be hard to get into Chicago, but I want to encourage everyone to do this because it's a kabuki theater. As Julian Assange has said, it's a choice between syphilis and cholera. And we have got to get this message to turn this trajectory around, or we're all going to be going up in flames with a nuclear World War III.
And the world has never been more volatile as it is at this moment as we're speaking.
Right.
Israel does a strike against the Hamas leader in Iran. And who warns about the next step? Russia. Russia is now speaking for Iran. What could be more dangerous? What could be more dangerous than threats of a tactical nuclear war? Why don't we end on that note and get your thoughts, that one last thought about that scenario from you, Colleen?
Yes, we all have to do what we can do. We're just normal people, but we have got to get this message up to the leadership at this point, because this is a complete fool's errand and it's dangerous as all get out.
Thank you, Colleen.
Thank you, Colleen.
Our guest for the last 30 minutes has been Coleen Rowley. Just this program note, we will be back on August 29th with another show. Thank you for tuning in, and don't forget to support KMUD.
Yes, Colleen, God bless you, ma'am, for the work that you're doing, and as a mother and as a peace activist. And thank you, KMUD Radio, for bringing shows like this to Northern California. And please support this station, this family of programmers and staff.